Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. And a beautiful weekend to you all. Welcome to today's newspaper review. Let's start with the Saturday Independent newspaper. A story making headlines at the front page of the Saturday Independent newspaper. How millions of infants are denied their first vaccine. You can find the full story on page 8 of the Saturday Independent. Still another story on the Saturday Independent. At the upper side, we have Beyond Arrest and Rescue, the real test of police operation against violent crimes. You can find that full story on page 30 of the same newspaper. Still on the same newspaper, we have Worshippers Hail Monarch, Governor at Grand Finale. You can find that full story on page 4 of the newspaper. Still making headlines on the same newspaper, we have for Osun election, we have analysts predict attitude of AMBO's godfathers could wreck his ambition at Saturday's poll. You can find that full story on page 13 of the newspaper. Another story on the same newspaper, we have Atiku raises security concern over mysterious credits to personal accounts. You can find the full story on page 6 of the newspaper. And lastly, for that newspaper, we have Japa, not the only route to success, said by Ijem in her movie, Tana Adelana. You can find that full story on page 9 of the newspaper. Moving away from the Saturday Independent to the Saturday Telegraph newspaper. Making headlines at the front page, we have Jonathan signed documents himself, ready to contest against Tinubu and others under PDP. You can find the full story on page 2 and page 20 of the newspaper. Still on the newspaper at the upper side, we have Atiku alleges attempts to smear reputation. You can find that full story on page 2 of the newspaper. Still at the upper side of the newspaper, we have one of my dad's dying wishes was to sustain the Punch as fitting legacy. You can find that story on page 13 of the Saturday Telegraph newspaper. Another story on the Saturday Telegraph newspaper, making headlines, we have all's not fair in politics, Mr. President. You can find that full story on page 3 of the newspaper. Another story on that newspaper, we have Dangote achieve extraordinary feats, says Goldman. You can find that full story on page 4 of the newspaper. And at the bottom side of the Saturday Telegraph newspaper, from Edo, we have police rescue 4 kidnapped victims, launch manhunt for suspects. You can find the full story on page 4 of the newspaper. Moving away from the Saturday Telegraph newspaper to the Saturday Sun newspaper. Making headlines at the front page, we have Life in Sambisa by ex-Boko Haram fighter. You can find that full story on page 4 and page 5 of the Saturday Sun newspaper. At the upper side, one of the stories at the upper side, we have I left South Africa empty-handed after 21 years under a xenophobic attack, said by a Nigerian returnee. You can find that full story on page 20 of the newspaper. Another story at the upper side of the Saturday Sun newspaper, we have outrage over video of resident taking oath to vote for Adeleke. You can find that full story on page 23, page 24, and page 28 of the newspaper. Still on the Saturday Sun newspaper, we have Sikh health centers keep rural dwellers in agony. You can find that full story on page 18 and page 19 of the newspaper. Still at the bottom of the newspaper, we have Distance Can't Stop True Love by Chichi. You can find the full story on page 15 of the newspaper. And lastly, for the Saturday Sun newspaper, we have Atiku said ICPC report on PFIPC scandal raises more questions. You can find that full story on page 25 of the Saturday Sun newspaper. Moving away from the Saturday Sun newspaper to the Guardian weekend newspaper. Making headlines on the newspaper, we have concern lingers over alleged intimidation concerning Osun polls. You can find that full story on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. Still at the Guardian newspaper, at the upper side, we have Abuja at 50, redemption song for Wike. You can find the story on the newspaper. Still on the newspaper, we have skill training opens new path for vulnerable children. You can find that full story on page 4 and page 5 of the newspaper. Still on the same newspaper, on page 3, we have under environmental degradation, we have Aru MAFC orders sterling oil to compensate host communities. Like I said, you can find that story on page 3 on the newspaper. Another story on the same newspaper, we have Dangote backs push for Nigeria's medical sovereignty, regenerative medicine. You can find that full story on page 3 of the newspaper. Still on the same newspaper, we have River Park Estate disputes now at international arbitration stage, said by Wike. You can find that full story on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. And lastly, for the Guardian newspaper, we have gunmen adopt farmers in Ondo, demand 100 million ransom. You can find that full story on page 44 of the Guardian newspaper. Moving away from the Guardian newspaper to the Saturday Punch. Making headlines, we have EFCC boss in sack storm over Osun. You can find that full story on page 4 of the Punch newspaper. Still making headlines on the Punch newspaper, we have how declining footbridge use turned highways into killing fields. You can find that story on page 19 of the newspaper. Still on that same newspaper, we have 13 die, 12 children remain in Kwara terrorist den. You can find that full story on page 12 of the Saturday Punch newspaper. Still on the Saturday Punch newspaper, at the bottom side, we have Arya Star denied visa over wrong certificates. You can find the full story on page 7 of the Saturday Punch newspaper. Still at the bottom side of the Saturday Punch newspaper, we have family questioned my son's paternity, maltreated my wife, said by artist Mr. P. You can find that full story on page 17 of the Saturday Punch newspaper. And that's the end for the Saturday Punch newspaper. Moving away from that newspaper to the Vanguard newspaper. Making headlines, we have 25 children died in captivity. You can find that full story on page 6 of the Vanguard newspaper. At the upper side, we have Nigerian children caught in deadly trap. You can find that full story on page 10 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. Still at the upper side, we have why Atiku is worried over strange payments into his bank account. We have that full story on page 7 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. Still at the upper side of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper, we have 50 years on stage, Daddy Shoki lights up Echo Hotels tomorrow. You can find the full story on page 26 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. Still on the Saturday Vanguard newspaper, we have Osun decides, I will block leakage, expand revenue, said by Oyeba Miji. You can find that full story on page 12 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. And lastly, for the Saturday Vanguard newspaper, we have Kwara Governor Abdulrazak eases judicial operations. You can find that full story on page 4 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. Moving away from that newspaper to the Matrix newspaper. Making headlines on the Matrix newspaper, we have Dele Momodu reviews alleged APC plot to grab states. You can find that story on the Matrix newspaper. Still on the Matrix newspaper at the upper side, making headlines, we have Tinubu sends Gbajabiamila 5 governors for investment conference. You can find that full story on the Matrix newspaper. Still on the Matrix newspaper, we have Lagos arrests 27 over alleged vandalism of newly constructed bridge. You can find that full story on the Matrix newspaper. Still on the Matrix newspaper, we have Brother Shaggy breaks silence months after shooting incident. You can find that full story on the Matrix newspaper. Still on the Matrix newspaper, we have Kwara governor receives 163 kidnapped victims, hails Tinubu and security forces. You can find that story on the Matrix newspaper. Still on that same newspaper, we have Barcelona's opening 38 euros 50 million offer for Rodri rejected by Man City. You can find that story on the Matrix newspaper. Still on the Matrix newspaper, we have Fayose sworn in as REA board chair, vows to deliver unprecedented results. You can find that story on the Matrix newspaper. Lastly, for the Matrix newspaper, we have Atiku raises alarm over mysterious campaign donation in his account by unknown individual. And you can find that story on the Matrix newspaper. Moving away from the Matrix newspaper to the last newspaper for the day, we have the First Daily newspaper. Making headlines, we have NLC demands fresh wage review as cost of living bites. You can find that full story on the First Daily newspaper. Still on the same newspaper, from P Square, we have From Brotherhood to Battle. You can find the full story on that newspaper. Still on the same newspaper, we have gunmen demand 100 million naira ransom after adopting Ondo farmers. You can find that full story on the First Daily newspaper. Still on that newspaper, we have murder, prophetess arrested over alleged 2.9 million naira baby sale. You can find that full story on the First Daily newspaper. Still on the First Daily newspaper, at the upper side making headlines, which is the last, we have Davido vows global action against electoral irregularities. You can find that full story on the First Daily newspaper. And we've come to the end of our newspaper review. Please stay with us for today and have a beautiful weekend.